Our first speaker is Walter Strong. So Walter is from Savannah, Georgia. He's a third-generation builder. Walter's going to come up here, share a bit of his story. It's called It's Broken.
I love this industry, but it's broken. It reminds me of this antiquated, rundown factory. We have a lot of dysfunction going on here. We have high business failure rates. We have high client dissatisfaction. We have low client trust. We have complicated and confusing billing practices. Our industry makes the American healthcare system look like a trip to Disney World. This industry has been in my family for over 65 years in 3 generations. One of the first things that my father shared with me was this really encouraging book about why family-owned businesses fail. So he's basically saying, like, welcome aboard, don't screw this thing up. One of the reasons cited for this failure is this common struggle that founders or leaders have with relinquishing control. They end up sort of training or creating these like one-bullet Barney fights that have no real authority. And this stubborn blindness, really, they get stuck doing the same things over and over and over again. And it creates this monkey see, monkey do culture with little innovation. My dad would tell me, he would say, we're in an industry where we're asked to sell a product before we know what it costs. Well, let me repeat that. We're the only industry where we are selling a product before we know what the final cost is. So you better be good at estimating and bidding. So for 20 years, I thought the key to success and survival in this industry was estimating and bidding. But it turns out this is actually the key to all of our risk and failure. Bidding, this thing that consumers have forced us to do to satisfy their immediate need to know costs and really reduce us down to a commodity. And the unintended consequences of that is most construction companies' primary sales strategy can be summed up in 2 words: low bidder. This is what our industry has created, and this is what Mr. Low Bidder looks like. He's a commodity. He's peanuts and corn, okay? He's a risk to everybody. His contracts are predatory. They have competing interests from his clients. I mean, does that really sound like a good way to start out a relationship with the client? It's no wonder that our industry has one of the highest client dissatisfaction rates when people trust such an emotional and a personal and financial investment to a low bidder, to a commodity. To make matters worse, Forbes, as I mentioned before, has ranked our industry one of the highest in business failure rates. Since I started in construction in '97, 5 out of the 7 top general contractors in our market have gone bankrupt. And that's being polite. Most of them have crashed and burned, and some embarrassing headlines in the local paper. Statistically speaking, contractors, we're playing a game where the odds are just simply against us. And yes, our family industry's been around forever, but in reality, I only considered us a survivor. And that really kind of came at the expense of never really growing. I honestly only know of 1 contractor in our market that has successfully retired. And I remember asking my dad, I was like, how did that guy do it? How did he make it? And he told me, I'll never forget this. He said, well, you know how you make a small fortune in this business, don't you? I was like, no, how? Tell me. He's like, you start out with a big one. I was like, oh, dear God. Oh, dear God. So I started to really realize why there were no publicly traded companies, custom contractors on Wall Street. So I really started thinking about Walter 2.0. And what Walter 2.0 was looking for was a much safer industry. Something more like what a Warren Buffett would invest in. You know, not go out, leave the cave every day, kill something, drag it back, get yelled at, and then repeat. It's exhausting, and it's frankly, it's a dumb way to make a living. What Walter 2.0 sort of failed to recognize initially was that in order to scale, in order to grow, I had to throw out all of the dysfunction that I had learned or created and replace it with simple efficiencies that would help me reduce risk. It was like Tiger Woods trying to learn a whole new swing again. So I came up with this super complicated algorithm for you guys for illustration. And this is simply efficiency minus risk equals scale. So efficiency for us means, you know, we take a single project manager and he runs everything from pre to post construction. There are no messy handoffs. Invoicing, job costs, that's all handled by that same project manager. Like, it doesn't take 3 people to touch one piece of paper like I was used to. So we've created a sort of a well-oiled machine, okay? Reducing our growth risk, well, that's from the franchise model. And that's a whole nother topic, but it's brilliant. It is the only way to really have growth in our industry with these ratios. You have a central head office, independently owned and operated offices, you know, no bloated IBM management structure. And then reducing job cost risk, well, that's client control. I mean, not only is client control a great risk management tool, but it's honestly the difference between us being a commodity and an advisor. Like, I always knew this was a flawed industry. But it really wasn't until I was a part of something much larger that I felt like I could do anything about it. So, if this were a game of odds, and it is, this is what the industry's poker hand would look like, okay? For efficiencies, they've got Barney Fife as their project manager, and they got monkey see, monkey do culture, okay? For project risk, they have a low bidder strategy. For growth risk, massive management structure, assistant to the coffee maker. Deuces, they're out. This is what the Allaire hand looks like. For efficiency, our project managers, they're the Terminator. Like, they do everything. Collaboration, like, we've got this entire room. Growth risk, our franchise model. Project risk, client control. Aces, we win. We scale, we go to the moon. We do not have to just stay alive anymore. As a matter of fact, odds are we have a real opportunity to build a legacy. And to build a legacy, you have to build a brand. And to build a brand, you can only do it through scale. We've got this real opportunity to change our family tree for our grandchildren. And I can 100% promise y'all, as a rare third-generation survivor in this room, that opportunity didn't exist before. The difference between this being a reality and a squandered opportunity lies in a 7-inch piece of real estate between your ears, my ears. And it reminds me of the anomaly of training fleas. You can take a bunch of fleas, stick them in a glass jar, close the lid, and first couple of days, hit their little flea head on the top of the lid. But eventually, they learn, they train themselves to only jump just shy of the rim. So day 2, you can take the lid off, and you can place this jar on a table. And for as long as those fleas are alive, they will never jump out of this jar. Our industry has had the lid on us, and it has trained us into believing into these same self-limiting expectations that have prevented us. And if we want to build a legacy, we've got to believe and jump over the rim and jump out of the jar. Thank you.